Market Front Lines. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk. The battery sector is crowded with promises, projections, and companies trying to convince the market they're the next big leap in energy. But not Neo Battery. They have just dropped news that cuts through that noise. Now, the company announced progress on its silicon anode commercialization pathway that also includes updates on production development, strategic positioning, and the next steps towards scaling its proprietary technology. It signals a company that is not talking about the future, but actively building on it. And joining me is the person pushing those incentives forward, Danny Haas, Senior Vice President and Strategy of Operations at Neo Battery. Welcome back, Danny. It's always great to see you again.
Great to be here.
Now, Danny, let's start with what investors are really trying to evaluate after this news release. Many companies in this space have made aggressive claims, but very few can actually prove that they're ready for industrial scale. So tell me what inside this update tells investors at this point that Neo silicon anode technology is not theoretical, but executable.
Yes, absolutely. So our top line and bottom line is always de-risking the technology project. And what we've done for the past 4 years is mainly R&D, trying to go from proof of concept to actual some type of small scale validation to large scale validation. One of the biggest struggles that we faced, and this doesn't apply to our company, but all the companies in the global battery field, is that there is the bureaucracy of large companies where you just need to continually validate. But, it's not just us that are being validated, so it takes a lot of time. So what we've done is we found a very good opportunity to go to downstream itself to actually produce the insides of the battery. And what we're looking to do is actually build the whole battery itself. And what that allows us to do is to drastically shorten the timeline from development to validation, because that can all happen internally. So what we'll be doing is that many investors or stakeholders think that we're trying to become a battery manufacturer, which is true. But how we differentiate ourselves here at Neo Battery is that we have our proprietary silicon anode technology that allows the lithium-ion battery to run much longer, charge faster, and most importantly, be cheaper compared to the competitors. So we'll be able to prop in our silicon anodes into the battery manufacturing lines, manufacture those batteries, deliver those batteries to the different types of downstream customers that we have, which range from automotive, drones, robotics, and any type of electronics products. We can use our silicon anodes into our batteries. So this is how we have been able to de-risk our project in the past few months.
Well, exciting news. I mean, right out of the gate, exciting news. Now, building off of that momentum then, every battery material company claims they have a competitive advantage. So after this latest update that you just dropped, what do you believe is the single most misunderstood or underrated strength that investors need to grasp if they're trying to determine who will lead in silicon-based anodes?
Yes. So for silicon anodes, there are quite a lot of companies in the world that are developing these technologies, and only 3 that have actually commercialized the technology at scale. But some of the technologies are still very high cost. So on the technical aspects, we would say that killing 3 birds with one stone, having much larger capacity, enabling ultra-fast charging, and also actually producing the materials at around costs of around 60 to almost 80% cheaper than our competitors is one of the main differentiating factors. But to say the single-handed differentiating factor of Neo Battery is not just the technology, but actually the team, because battery manufacturing, like semiconductor manufacturing, needs a lot of precision, needs know-how from people that have actually worked in industries and global manufacturers. And what we've been able to do is hire many people that actually worked at Korea's largest global battery cell manufacturers. And those are actually the largest cell manufacturers outside of China. So we know the expertise, we have the expertise, we have the know-how to actually precisely manufacture not just the upstream silicon anodes, but also the downstream batteries. So quality from our experience is the single-handed differentiator that will prove us different in the coming subsequent months and years.
Well, then shifting from differentiation over to execution, the scale up phase is where companies usually expose their weakness. Now, your release outlines key steps in your production development and strategic operations. So, what part of this scale up carries the most internal pressure, and what is your team doing to show that you can actually advance without losing time or capital?
Yes. So one of the execution really relates back to the experience that the team has, because when we start manufacturing battery materials, the insides of the batteries are called electrodes, and battery assembly itself, there's, if not 100, 200, 300 variables that are affecting the performance of all from the upstream to the downstream. So one of our key de-risking initiatives is to be precise on all of the variables, control as much as variables as we can so that the yields are very high. And for battery manufacturing, yield is one of the most important economic factors that really kills a company or makes a company succeed. So this is why we are trying to reduce down the scrap rates. And right now, what our engineers are doing in the factory itself is optimizing the manufacturing parameters. And when we do this, we can enhance the yield because even one single crack in those electro components is a default product, and we cannot ship those. We It's just losses that just accumulate and accumulate. So this is why for execution, really precision manufacturing, quality assurance is going to be the most important for our execution and manufacturing of the battery materials and the batteries itself.
Well, then, Danny, moving forward, the global race for advanced materials is accelerating, and those OEMs are positioning early now. I mean, your announcement referenced strategic movements that point to growing international interest. Who stands to benefit most here from adopting NEO's technology, and why is that interest intensifying now?
Yes, as we continually talk about the global battery supply chain, as many know, almost 77%, even 80% of the world's batteries are being produced in China today. And when we start talking about electronics, the proportion of Chinese manufacturing goes up. And it's not that we have anything against China, but the global industry, especially the downstream manufacturers, have something against China. And to divert the supply chain outside of China is very hard to do because there is, first of all, a limited amount of battery manufacturers that can actually supply batteries. But where the problem worsens is that every single different electronic systems, let's say drones, robotics, a battery, a one size fits all battery solution isn't going to create the best performance for these two different types of applications. So customizing batteries really increases the problem, the supply problem. So this is why we have seen demand heighten for Neo batteries services and the silicon anodes, because our key strategy is not having a set product catalog to show different types of downstream clients, but what we do is something that people might see not as scalable, but it's working on the strategy end. And what we do is actually customize each lithium-ion battery for each client and their end use application. So this is how we've been able to really get through different types of companies, electronics companies, and automotive companies, drone robotics. So customization and supply are the key two drivers of demand for Neo Batteries products at this time.
I mean, well, that's all really great news. However, Danny, investors don't want narratives, they want proof. So, if we're looking at the next 6 to 12 months, what does real valuation look like for NEO after this release? And more specifically, what markers should investors be watching to separate long term potential from the sector noise right now?
Yes, through this facility lease, right now, as I said, the engineers are optimizing the manufacturing parameters. And the logical next steps is to actually start producing the battery electrodes. And right now, there is existing clientele that have used this factory to procure the battery electrodes. But also, as next steps, we have our new clientele or pipeline such as drone manufacturers, robotics manufacturers that are very keen in procuring their customized battery solutions. So, what investors and stakeholders should be aware of is that Neo Battery is no longer just a pure R&D nil revenue company, but we are now transitioning into an actual revenue generating company. And what we're adding on as our accelerants of the next steps to production is that we will also be doubling capacity by adding shifts and also integrating automation into the factory. So this would help the increase in revenue generation. And we do see that maybe I can't talk about specific timelines, but we would say in the very short term, we can start producing the actual battery electrodes and also making some battery cells and also selling these products directly to the downstream clientele that we currently have.
Well, Danny, another great conversation for the books. Thank you again for joining us and really keep that momentum going and come back soon.
And thank you so much, Lizzie.
Again, that was Danny Haas, Senior Vice President of Strategy and Operations at Neo Battery Materials. They trade on the Venture Exchange under NBM and on the OTC under NBMFF. If you want to see why the market is watching, start at neobatterymaterials.com. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk with Appeton Media, and this has been the Market Front Lines.